Sorry. You're probably wondering why I was walking up and down, right? I was trying to get my 10,000 steps in. You you get it? Okay. I don't like walking. I actually do not like walking. But if you're here and you love walking, okay. If you love walking, at least you have a choice, right? The people in the Bible, the Israelites, they didn't quite have a choice when they were walking to the promised land. So imagine, this is me, and let's assume my promised land was London. London? It's going to take me 52 days to walk to my promised land, London. Okay. What if it was New York? Apparently, I can't walk there. There's no walkable path. Except I can walk on water, which I cannot. However, there's something interesting. No options. But the fastest and most practical option is the airplane. Right? The airplane. So, thank God for airplanes. And thank God for people who created airplanes. Because now I don't have to walk to London and New York. So thinking about this, I started to wonder, who came up with the idea for the airplanes? So, throwing the question out there, when you think about airplanes, who do you think about? Okay, I thought you'd say that. Wright brothers, right? If you said Wright brothers, you are right, but not entirely right. Get it? Ah, I love my audience. Actually, the history of airplanes started with birds. We looked up, we saw birds, we wondered, what if we could see from their vantage point something different? Actually, a king actually tried to fly and he died at this time. But moving on, we couldn't fly, so it was established, and we were like, okay, maybe we could create items that could fly, right? So we made kites, 1000 BC. That's when it was created. The thing about these inanimate objects is you fly it, but you have to hold it down. It wasn't until 8,600 years later that a guy called Archytas came up with a self-propelling device, the first inanimate object ever recorded to fly by itself for a couple of minutes, a wooden pigeon. It took another long couple of years, another 1,000 years, a millennium, for Roger Bacon to come up with an idea. He called it the ornithopter. So you can remember it. Think helicopter and then ornithopter. Yeah? It was an idea. Leonardo da Vinci, famous artist, you know him for his painting works. You probably do not know that he contributed to the aviation idea. So he designed the parachute and also designed more ornithopters. Only difference is it was an idea. It didn't fly. Get it? Nice one. Took another 200 years for Bartholomew, I hope I pronounced his name right, to come up with a model glider. And this opened up the world of hot air balloons. So we had our first balloon flights in the late 1700s. 100 years later. George Cayley introduced the concept of aerodynamics, and he came up with a design for a biplane, I think 1843 or thereabouts. We've not reached though. Another 90 years later, that's when the Wright brothers started to study aviation. And they took all the research that I've told you about so far and more, put it together, and created the first self-propelled machine that could fly 120 feet high and stay for a whole 12 seconds in the sky. 12 seconds cannot get me to New York. No, it cannot. However, it laid the foundations for what became. So we dreamt of flying. Remember that our talk, many contributors, and over 3,000 years later, we're all now flying. The difference is some people, many people, dreamt about flying. Then a few decided to do something about it, execute the idea, bring their contributions together. And now, people like me and a lot of us in the building are now living the reality of flying. This is the power of contribution, and I think that's the power of also executing ideas. I don't think that our ideas just matter. I think that they are matter. Okay. As I talk about this, I think about a moment where I'm transported to my primary school days, sitting down in front of my teacher, teaching me about matter. And what he said was, matter is anything that has mass and occupies space, meaning things that constitute the universe. I also remember that I was taught about the different states of matter. Yeah? Remember this? Solid, liquid, and gas. And most times, whenever they want to emphasize the point of matter, they always talk about water. Ice, water, liquid, and then steam. Remember? So what if we imagined our ideas and dreams as water? Or better still, as matter? When forming an idea, it's just in the air. We can't see it, right? We just pluck it out of thin air. You're not the only one with the idea. There are a bunch of people with the idea. But the only time the idea goes from an idea to a theory is when you sit with it, you condense it, you ensure that it carries weight, you give it weight. You sit with it. Guess what happens? It becomes theory. This could be as an article, it could be a tweet, it could be just an idea that you have shared, that you spent some time thinking about. You formed it. You go from that and you make it tightly packed. Even better, you're trying to create repeatable success. And so you make it a creation. So you take it from theory to a creation. How I like to see it is Leonardo da Vinci went from idea, actually, the very first guy, all of us were thinking, oh, I wish I could fly. We were here. I mean, if we were born 3,000 years ago, we were here. And then people like Leonardo da Vinci took it from idea to theory. They designed, they put out ideas, but it didn't actually fly. And then creation, people like the Wright brothers made something that could actually fly, even though for 12 seconds. Remember? And guess what? The idea started to spread. Before we get into spreading the idea, something that we cannot see when the idea comes in, that's what it is. And then when we sit with the idea, we condense it, it becomes something that we can see but grasp. We can't hold it. And then when we make it a creation, it becomes something that we can see and hold on to. Then it becomes time to spread the idea. Think again about the flight, the plane. After the creation was put out, there started to be all this quick succession of, you know how I was saying 1,600 years, 200 years, 100 years, in things like 20 years, 5 years, 4 years. Planes started to come about. People started to come up with jets. I think 1978 was when we had our first commercial flight. And then now Commercial flights are normal. 2019, an electric plane just flew. So we're moving faster. Who knows? Very soon we would be teleporting. Right? But that's because the Wright brothers put out a creation. And they went from creating to putting it out there in the world. And because it was in different people's hands, we used it in different ways. And we found better ways to let the idea spread. You remember that liquid flows easily more than solid does. So by the time the idea is spreading, it becomes fluid again. Right? And then, before you know what's happening, it becomes this. It births new ideas. It becomes the foundation for new ideas. It gives other people permission to dream up new ideas. Now we don't have to think about how do we defy gravity. Someone else did the hard work. We can focus on other things and other advancements. And that makes everything so much better. By putting your ideas out in the world, you create a chain reaction. This means that ideas will remain ideas until they're executed. But you know what's even cooler? Executed ideas will always be a success. Meaning that even if something fails, an innovation did not quite work, the best part of it is that every executed idea is a win. Okay, so we're going to pause. Let's practice what we've just learned. So pull out your phones. Pull out your phones. Perfect. Take a picture of me. I look beautiful. Yeah? Thank you. Or anything that catches your eye. It could be yourself as well, right? Just take a picture. Tweet it. Post it. Share it. But most importantly, share it with a thought. A thought that just crossed your mind while you were listening to me. Let's convert that thought from air to liquid. Yeah? Who knows? The people who are not in this room right now, and it could spark another idea for them. You could release something into the universe and you would be contributing in real time. So are we doing that? I'm going to join you. I'm about to do mine. So when I say scream, everybody scream, okay? We need to look cool. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Scream! Perfect. Perfect. That's my own idea that I would be sharing later. Speaking of social media, I mean, this would not be complete if I don't talk about social media, especially now that they give that long intro about me being a branding expert, tech expert. Yeah, I'm all those things. For social media to exist, so much has happened. Charles Babbage, remember Charles Babbage? They taught us in computer science again, primary school. Charles Babbage created something called an analysis engine, right? But the analysis engine had to exist for calculators to exist. And calculators had to exist for personal computers to exist. And personal computers had to exist for smartphone and the internet to exist. And smartphones and the internet had to exist for social media to exist. And guess what? Because social media exists, there's been so many things that have come out of it. We now have social media influencers, digital marketing as a job, advertising, digital advertising. Just imagine so much is now possible because social media now exists. My point is, the way the world looked 1,000 years, 3,000 years ago is not how it looks now. You and I, every single one of us, have made the world better. And so I think that we exist for contribution. And biggest legacy we would ever leave would be within the things that we contribute. So let me tell you about wannabe Dr. Belssing. I'm sure a bunch of you didn't know after hearing my bio that I was going to be a doctor one time in my life. Wannabe. As you can see, it didn't work out. Not because I wasn't smart though. You know, in secondary school, I was one of the only students who was allowed to take both science and art courses. That's how creative I was, and that's how scientific I was. So my lecturers could never choose, so they made me do both. And then I went on to, I was so annoying, to be honest. I would tell people in the neighborhood, don't call me Belssing, call me Dr. Belssing. That's how sure I was that I was going to be a doctor. Because I really wanted to save lives. So I went ahead, and in my university days, I decided to do biochemistry. So it was while on that journey that I realized there has to be other ways to save lives. Because this one is not quite going how I thought it would go. I mean, I was excellent, I was smart, and I graduated with great grades, by the way. But I started to explore other ways to save lives. And you know what I found? That anybody who is doing honest work is adding value in one way or the other. And they're saving lives in one way or the other. This means that farmers who are farming to put food on the table are making life easier for doctors, because how would a hungry doctor stand for 20 hours to do surgery? I don't see how it will happen. Even better, most of the medical advancements, especially in pharmacy, depend on phytomedicine to be able to move forward. So you need to extract things from plants to make the medicine that we consume. So we're all important. We all play a role. And I'm telling you this story because I think the biggest legacy you would ever leave will be the ideas that you execute and the ideas that you spread. So as you go about this, you go about becoming a contributor, which is how I like to define myself. Not as all those cool things they told you about. I like to call myself a contributor. Even if I'm cool, by the way. I'm serious. Google me. I'm really cool. I've done some cool things. 3 things I would like you to remember. Embrace experiments. The thing about experiments is the goal of an experiment is not to be right, but to discover. And so if you embrace life as an experiment, you're going to live a life full of discovery. You would see failure very differently. So things won't look as though they're failures to you anymore. It will just be an opportunity to discover something new. Document and share your story. I'm very sure that there were other people who contributed to this flight airplane research that we just talked about, but we don't know them. They can't prove they were there. There is no history saying their name. So, they're just lost in history. That should not be you. Make sure it's not you. And how you can do that is not wait for anyone else to tell your story. Take charge of your life. Take charge of your story and tell your story. And it could be in the little things, like tweeting today to say, "Hi, I'm at TEDx today, and this is an idea that just sparked in my mind." It could be that simple. It could be about taking pictures to freeze a moment in time, but document, proof. So you use people who were not documented in history. Most importantly, prioritize progress over perfection. The goal is not to move from 0 to 1. The goal is to move from 0 to 0.1. And by moving to 0.1, you might be giving people permission to even move and use 0.1 as their starting point. I remember the Hilda Bassi story, where Hilda Bassi broke the Guinness Book of Record, right? Longest cooking time. A lot of people suddenly we just started hearing, "I want to break record for this. I want to break record for that." Everybody wanted to break records. But what that really meant was, by Hilda going through the process that we discussed, she put her idea out there, she solidified it, she put it out there as solid. And guess what? She spread the idea. Again, it became gas. And people felt the permission to be able to break their own records. The things we do are foundations for other people's dreams. So the question I want you to ask yourself today is, what little can I contribute to make the world a better place? Thank you very much.